Welcome back to TalkNorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. We've had quite the travel summers. I'm in San Francisco with my wife on vacation this week. Where are you?
Me, I'm sitting in my office here at my house, and I am going Wednesday to Boston for a day to do a story, and that's why we have to change our live show at the at Tin Shed till the day before. So I do apologize for that, Jim.
Oh, it's okay. So to remind people, our next live show's at Tin Shed in Savage, where we've had huge turnout the last two shows. I really appreciate everybody makes the effort to come out and see us in person and stops by and chats. Next two live shows are going to be August 13th and August 29th, 7 p.m., both cases at Tin Shed Savage. I don't know that we can promise a 200th anniversary show or a major breaking general manager being fired story every time, but we still would love to see all the people that came out. Anytime you can make it out, stop by. You know the deal. Good food, good drink, good people, and a good time. This is the Russo-Souhan Show, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. Thanks to our sponsors, Twill in the Dining Galleria, FixologyRepair.com, now in 3 locations, including the new one in St. Paul, Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin, Bite Squad, and, of course, Tin Shed. Tin Shed MN is the best place to find them. All right, so let's start moving this story forward. I know you did a big piece breaking down what led to the firing of Paul Fenton. Is there anything new to add at this point?
No, I mean, that story I did the other day, obviously I reached out to Paul to talk to him for the story because I'm well aware that story is one side, and, obviously Paul didn't write back. So it really became a one-sided story. And, I painstakingly tried, if you read throughout that story, tried to give sort of, maybe what Paul was thinking during this, or try to, at least say stuff like it's his prerogative to do what he wants with his staff, and it's his prerogative to do what he wants with his coaches and things like that. So, but I agree. I mean, it's a tough story. It's not a great look for what went on inside the organization the last year. Trust me, that was the very thinned out version of what it could have been. And now it's just a matter of kind of realizing as an organization that you've got to now take the time here and do the due diligence to hire the perfect the candidate. Not every candidate's going to check all the boxes. There are some really, really good candidates right now. I think that Craig Leopold, Matt Maka, and Mike Modano have a really good plan going forward. I can tell you from reading the tea leaves that I don't think that this decision that they are going to have a hiring in the next couple of weeks. I think this is more than likely going to happen in the last week of August, or maybe a little bit before that. I just get the impression right now, Craig has left town for a little bit. Matt Maka and Mike Modano are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes to talk to candidates, to do a lot of the due diligence. Then when Craig gets back into town next week, they'll really put the pedal to the metal, bring in some more people to interview, and then probably begin their rounds of second interviews. But right now, the way that I'm seeing things is that you have kind of the experienced guys that have a chance. Those guys would be Ron Hextall and Don Waddell as your two probably favorites of that group of people that include the Peter Chiarellis of the world, and then there's Garth Snow. I don't get the impression that Dean Lombardi is interested in the job, because I do believe that behind the scenes, Dean Lombardi has been a really good resource for the Wild to talk about some of these clients, like Mike Fuda in LA, Ron Hextall, people like that. Then you have kind of the assistant GM grouping. Another person with experience, by the way, that will have an interview, I believe, is Brian Lawton. I know he had a phone interview, and I think he's going to get in front of him, at some point, whether it's this week or when Craig Leopold gets back. And Brian obviously has seen a ton of games, knows this team like the back of his hand, has seen a ton of games with his role on NHL Network. And obviously, if you ever talk to him, I'm sure that he'll put a presentation that impresses them together. Then you have the assistant GMs. Those start with Billy Guerin. I think he's the front runner of them all right now. This is the second year in a row they've interviewed him. I think it went really well. Next one, I think, would be Scott Mellanby. I think Mellanby is going to get in front of them, and I know that they've heard a lot of really good things about him. Tom Fitzgerald is the one that still sort of is peculiar to me. He, from everything I've reported, was the runner-up last year. From everything I hear right now, they have not actually officially called, as of this moment that I'm speaking, for permission to talk to him. So I don't know if it's because they feel they know him. But as far as I know, they haven't reached out. Maybe they also know that in that time frame that Tom Fitzgerald, his role has increased with New Jersey. Maybe he's gotten a big raise. Maybe, a lot of times when your role is elevated in a front office, Bill Zito's in this category too. That a lot of times part of your deal is that you're not going to go for every job, or that the only way that you'll be allowed to talk to another team again is essentially you're a shoo-in. So maybe Tom's not part of that. Mike Fuda, as I mentioned, in LA. Very well respected in the game. They're hearing great things about him. Bill Zito, as I mentioned, I think they're going to have a phone interview with Basil McRae. I don't look at him as a first-tier candidate. I think he's just going to, this is sort of Mike Modano's tight with him. I think they want to hear his opinions of the organization, give him an interview. And then there's kind of the next, the unique candidates that don't fit into either of those categories. One would be Mark Hunter. I do believe he's going to interview for the job. He's been a finalist in places like Edmonton and Seattle. He's the current co-owner of the London Knights with his brother Dale Hunter, and he's the GM of that team. Left the Toronto Maple Leafs when he didn't get the job over Kyle Dubas last year, the GM job. And the other name, I'm not kidding you, that I do think that they're going to at least talk to. I don't look at him as being a first tier candidate at all. Is Pierre Maguire. I think that there's respect for him outside the organization in the NHL that have suggested to the Wild to talk to him, and I think Craig Leopold likes him, and I think that he's just going to at least talk to him. The one thing about Pierre is that he's seen a ton of hockey, so sometimes, again, part of these processes when you interview candidates is that you try to figure out a lot of intel about what the perception is about your roster, your team, things going on here. And Pierre Maguire has a lot of friends. He knows probably a lot of details about what went on with this organization, not only the last year, but since he was a candidate in 2009. And maybe you gain some intel, even if you don't look at him as right away as a candidate on par with Hextall and Waddell and Guerin and Mellanby and people like that.
Wow, that's quite a rundown. Sounds like they have a lot of work ahead of them. I'm going to ask you one question, then we're going to do a lot of Twitter questions today because we usually don't get as many Twitter questions when we do the live shows. So Modano is a big name here. He was a big part of hockey and hockey success in Dallas. He was incredibly popular there. But is he the right guy to help an owner who messed up the last hire fix it? Does he have the skills and the knowledge to make this a better search?
Well, I mean, obviously, in terms of hockey ops experience, he doesn't have that yet. I think his hope is that this eventually transitions into somebody that not just helps the Wild with business and all that, but that could transition into, being an advisor for the new GM, or even potentially advancing to being president of hockey ops one day and provide oversight and be a liaison to Craig Leopold. But what I like about Modano is that he is doing his homework. I did a huge story on him the other day. He's talked to guys like Lou Lamoriello, Bob Gainey, Kenny Holland, and really tried to ascertain and learn the type of things that they look for in a good GM, questions to ask. The other thing I like about Mike Modano is he's got a ton of friends in the game. So you, behind the scenes, while maybe Matt Macon, Craig Leopold has done the initial interviews, Mike Modano wasn't in the room for the Chiarelli, Hextall, Waddell, and Billy Guerin interviews, as I've reported here in The Athletic that they've already interviewed for this job. He wasn't in the room for that, but he will be later in the process. But he's somebody that can present to Craig Leopold and Matt Maka the things that he is hearing about these people in his due diligence, things that friends are telling about these guys, and he can almost make a presentation and do a lot of that background work that maybe was missed with Paul Fenton and the last go around here. So, regardless of who it is, I mean, it's the top scoring U.S. born player in the history of the NHL. I just think that to have somebody that could ask hockey questions in the room, I think is absolutely huge. And it'll be interesting. I mean, there's just some weird. The fact that Don Waddell has suddenly gotten this process has now all of a sudden changed everything. I could tell you that I think Ron Hextall had a great interview with Craig Leopold and Matt Maka. I think that Billy Guerin had a great interview with Matt Maka. If you know Don Waddell, there's no doubt that he hit the interview out of the park. And I think what impresses, there's a history there between Craig Leopold and Don Waddell. I mean, Don Waddell was actually up for the original Nashville job back in 1997. And then obviously they hired David Poyle, which was the right decision at the time, clearly by Craig Leopold. And so Don Waddell goes to the Atlanta Thrashers. And they've kept in touch ever since, because Don Waddell has always also been part of the business side of a team. He's been a governor of all the teams he's been with, in both Carolina and Atlanta, at least. I don't think in Pittsburgh. And so he gets to basically be at these board of governors meetings and converse and things like that with Craig Leopold. I think what makes Don Waddell really interesting here is, one, he's a current GM. He's coming off a great season in Carolina, and he's somebody that that would have the personality and the experience level to come into a really tricky situation very late in the game and close to training camp, which to me is the most frightened thing about this process, is that, you know, if you hire a newbie, or if you hire somebody that doesn't have the institutional background to come here, you know, all of a sudden, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to be happen that starts in April for the next year's training camp, let alone in late August, 2 weeks before camp, where I don't think that a guy like Waddell would be intimidated by that at all. He'll know right away he's got to sit down with Zach Parise. He'll know right away he's got to get in front of Jared Spurgeon. He'll know right away he's got to fly to Russia and talk to Kaprizov. And you know, but there's so much to do. I mean, you got to figure out who's on your staff, the terms of contracts for your scouts, who your scouts are. Plus, you got to move your entire life here. I mean, you know, I remember, not to bring this back to me, but I remember I took the job I was offered the job at the Star Tribune when Hurricane Katrina came over Florida. So that would have been probably late August, right? And then it took me until about September 3rd or 4th to accept the job. And I moved my entire life here September 9th for training camp that started September 12th. And it took me 2 months to just stop from my heart palpitating because of all the stuff that you got to do behind the scenes to move your entire life somewhere, let alone get used to a new job and learn a new team. So you take this now, that very macro level, and you take it now to being the GM of a franchise, the CEO of your hockey ops department. This is very tough. And I just think that all of a sudden Waddell being available is going to really make Craig Leopold and Matt Maka think. It is absurd to me that he's even available. The lack of respect level from the owner down there, Tom Dundon, and those quotes were in the Raleigh News and Observer. So I broke the story yesterday morning that Waddell was here. Luke DeCock, Sarah Sivian from The Athletic confirmed it as well. And then Luke DeCock actually got Tom Dundon on the phone, the News and Observer columnist, and the quotes are just unreal. Like, yeah, I told him to go for the interview. If he can make more money there, all the power to him. And this is a GM that I'm pretty positive, I don't know this for a fact, but he was not making a ton of money as the president of the team, and then didn't take a penny more to be the GM of the team. And now all of a sudden it's August 5th, and a GM of the year finalist that took his team to the Eastern Conference final has no contract. This is absolutely unprecedented that a current GM of a team, you know, it's unprecedented that there'd be a GM opening this late in the game anyway. But it's unprecedented that a current GM would be allowed to go for that position. And now Don Waddell is absolutely a viable candidate. This is not about leverage. Like, a lot of people just think he's trying to get more money from his owner. This is not about leverage. I think Don Waddell feels disrespected. And if this job is offered to Don Waddell, he will be the next GM of the Wild, I think.
Well, he's my new favorite candidate. Hey, let's thank Twill and Galleria, twillmn.com. Scott Dayton Shop. He's been sponsoring this program for a long time and the network for a long time, and I am wearing Twill as we speak, as always.
I'm here with my wife, Stacy. We went to Twill in the Edina Galleria the other day. We saw Scott Dayton, and I bought the nicest sport jacket I've ever owned, the most comfortable pants I've ever owned. They're Bracks. A nice pair of loafers that I can wear to the ballpark. I think they're called Tracks. And I bought a bunch of Stenstrom short sleeve shirts to go with my Stenstrom nice dress shirts. And, you know, I used to wear just disposable clothes. Now when I buy something, I buy it at Twill. I know it's going to last me the rest of my life, and it's going to be comfortable.
And on top of that, it's not just the best stuff you've ever had, but it's really everyday things that you can wear and that will fit all occasions.
Yeah, I've worn the Stenstrom short sleeve shirts every day this week. When I dress up or even just want to look nice at a game or a Lynx game or something, I wear the Stenstrom dress shirts. But really, the Bracks pants are the most comfortable I've ever worn. They are more comfortable than jeans. I never thought I'd have anything more comfortable than a broken-in pair of jeans.
And he keeps saying that, Scott. So thank you very much.
Twill in the Edina Gallery.